It's the 3rd of September, 6:31, where the Platting Board will convene. The first order of business is going to be roll call.
Mr. Story?
Excused.
Mr. Abel?
Here.
Mr. Fuller?
Here.
Mr. Young?
Present.
Mr. Cole?
Excused.
Mr. Edmondson?
Here.
Mr. Walker?
Excused.
Ms. Enix? Here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the action summaries for Wednesday, August 6, 2014. May I have a positive motion to accept the action summaries? Mr. Edmondson and Mr. Abel seconds. Is there any objection to any opposition or objection? Hearing and seeing none, the motion carries and the action summaries are approved. Next item on the agenda is are the minutes for July 16th, 2014. May I have a positive motion to accept the minutes? Mr. Edmondson. And Mr. Fuller seconds. Thank you. Is there any opposition or corrections? Hearing and seeing none, the motion carries and these are approved. Next item on the business is special order of business are disclosures. And I understand there's some disclosures tonight. Who would like to go first? Mr. Edmondson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In case S12094 on the consent agenda, Checkpoint subdivision, just like to disclose that my firm, the Peterson Group, has business dealings with White Raven Development and Holquist Homes on another project, but that the firm that I work for, nor do I have any personal or financial interest in the case before us tonight, so I feel like I can act impartially in this case for us.
Thank you. Before I take a motion directing you to participate, I have the same disclosure with my company has worked for Holquist Homes, and they've also worked on this property. But we have, I can be fair and impartial. So could we have a positive motion directing both of us to participate, and if you want one of us not to participate, then we can break the motion up. Mr. Fuller, thank you. And Ms. Enix seconds. Is there any discussion or opposition to, well, actually, Mr. Fuller, would you speak to your motion, please?
Yes, I move that you be both required to participate, seeing there's no conflict of financial interest or gain, and I plan to support it.
Thank you. Is there any additional discussion? Is there any opposition? Hearing and seeing none, Mr. Trevor or Mr. Edmondson and I are both directed to participate. Are there any additional disclosures tonight? Mr. Porter and then Mr. Fuller.
Yes, Mr. Chair. On one of the cases that are coming up,
Okay, thank you. May I have a positive motion directing Don Porter to participate? Mr. Edmondson, and Mr. Bell seconds. Mr. Edmondson, will you speak to your motion?
In case S12095, I move to direct Mr. Porter to participate in the case.
Will you speak to your motion, please?
Yeah, I won't be supporting my motion based on the testimony that Mr. Porter gave. Does not feel like he can act impartial in this case, so I will not support the motion.
Thank you. Is there any additional discussion? Hearing and seeing none, since there's opposition, we will vote. A yes vote directs Mr. Porter to participate. A no vote directs him to recuse himself. And it's unanimous no, so Mr. Porter, you're directed to recuse yourself, which means you have to go sit in the other room in isolation during the case.
Okay.
And if you want, we can show you where that is.
Okay.
Thank you. Next disclosure is Mr. Fuller, and then Mr. Edmondson. Mr. Fuller.
Yes, on the case S12078, I request to be recused. So we're negotiating with the property owner currently.
Thank you. May I have a positive motion directing Mr. Fuller to participate, please?
Actually, I have a question, if I could ask before.
Yes, you may.
Was that S12078? Sorry.
Yes.
Was that case S12078?
Yes.
Yes, the
Fairview subdivisions? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Bell and Mr. Edmondson seconds. Mr. Bell, would you state your motion and speak to your motion, please?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to have Mr. Fuller participate in case S12078.
And would you speak to your motion, please?
Yes, I will not be supporting my motion because of the details given by Mr. Fuller.
Thank you. And I will not be supporting it because of the financial gain or potential financial interest. Since there's opposition, this motion will be voted on. A yes vote will direct Mr. Fuller to participate. A no vote will direct him to recuse himself. And it's unanimous no. Mr. Fuller, you'll be recused. Mr. Edmondson, did you have another disclosure?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'd like to disclose in case S12078 Fairview Subdivision, extension number 1. My firm, the Peterson Group, has numerous business dealings with Cook Inlet Housing Authority, who is co-petitioner on this particular case. I'd also like to disclose that we're currently working with Enterprise Engineering and Melissa Branch on another project as well. She's the petitioner's representative. Although we do not have any involvement, nor do I have any involvement, personal or financial, in this particular project. I do have knowledge of it, but have not had any involvement or financial gain in it, one way or the other. So I do feel like I can act impartially in this case.
Thank you. And let's do another duel together. I also would like to disclose that in the same case, S12078 Fairview Subdivision, extension 1A and 9A-1, that I've had business dealings in the past with the co-petitioner on other projects. I have no ongoing business with them, and I have no interest in this case or in this property or case. So I can be fair and impartial also. May I have a positive motion directing Mr. Edmondson and I to participate, please? Anyone can make the motion. Mr. Bell and Mr. Fuller seconds. Mr. Bell, will you state your motion, please?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that Mr. Young and Mr. Edmondson participate in case S12078.
Thank you. Will you speak to your motion, please?
I plan to go along with this motion, seeing as neither Mr. Young and Mr. Edmondson have any personal or financial gain, and for the other reasons given.
Thank you. Is there any additional discussion? Is there any opposition? Hearing and seeing none, Mr. Edmondson, you and I are directed to participate. Thank you. Are there any additional disclosures tonight? Mr. Edmondson, do you have another disclosure?
Sorry, no, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. And then the next item on special order of business are informational items. Is there any comments on the informational items, which are the abbreviated plat action summary of August 11th? Tonight we have a short board for two cases, the Fairview subdivision extension and the UAA. So let me read when there is a short 5-member board or commission, which is tonight, and a postponement is offered to and agreed to by the petitioner, they will be moved to the next regular agenda. This should occur within 30 days, which does not require renoticing the case, a new public hearing, notices, advertising, etc. If the petitioner is willing to postpone but unable to attend the next available meeting date within 30 days, the petitioner has a one-time option to choose the next date certain. He or she can attend at no extra fee. When a postponement is requested by the petitioner, there is a rescheduling fee, AMC R 21-20-007A, and a new public hearing date shall be determined by the Planning Division. This will put the case in the next available cutoff date queue as if they were submitting their case for the first time. So in these two cases, are the petitioners, would they like to postpone, or would they like this to be heard by the short board?
Mr. Chairman, I'm Jim Sawhill with Lounsbury & Associates, and I'm here tonight representing APU and UAA subdivision, and we would like to go forward tonight.
Thank you.
Melissa Branch with Enterprise Engineering on behalf of ESM Properties in the case S12078, and we'd like to proceed tonight as well.
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, which is Checkpoint subdivision for a first 18-month time extension request for preliminary plat. May I have a positive motion extending the time? Or, I'm sorry. May I have a positive motion to approve the consent agenda, please? Mr. Edmondson, Mr. Abell, is there any opposition to this motion? Any discussion or opposition? Hearing and seeing none, the consent agenda passes. We're now into the new business phase, and the first case is Fairview Subdivision Extension. Mr. Fuller, we'll wait for you to recuse yourself. The first case under new business is case S12078, Fairview Subdivision, extension number 1. And may we have staff's presentation, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This preliminary plat is a request for subdivision of 4 tracts and 1 lot into 2 tracts of land with a vacation of a portion of Park Lane right-of-way and a cul-de-sac, vacation of a 30-foot driveway easement dedicated by plat 67-1, vacation of a 10-foot drainage easement dedicated by plat 2010-79, vacation of a portion of the 10-foot T&E and drainage easement within the Park Lane right-of-way being dedicated with this plat, and vacation of a of a temporary public use easement dedicated by plat 2010-79. A site plan review and conditional use public hearing for a self-storage and vehicle storage facility was approved on June 4th, 2012 by the Planning and Zoning Commission. A preliminary plat of this Fairview subdivision, tracts 1A and 8B, was approved by the Platting Board June 6, 2012. The approved plat subsequently expired due to an unresolved condition associated with that plat approval. This preliminary plat application is intended to complete and correct the previously expired plat. The petition site is the location of the former Park Lane bowling alley, located north of the Glen Highway, south of Mountain View Drive, west of Bunn Street, and east of Clevin Street. The property is zoned B3 General Business District. All proposed tracts within this subdivision meet the minimum requirements of the B3 district with relationship to lot size and width. Buffer landscaping in accordance with AMC 2145-125C2 is required along the east petition site boundary adjoining residentially zoned property. A 15-foot planting bed width is required under AMC 2145-290K1 standards for self-storage and vehicle storage facilities. Visual enhancement landscaping is required in accordance with AMC 2145C1 along all lot lines that adjoin commercially zoned property. As the petitioner has already been given conditional use and site plan approval for the self-storage facility, it is assumed that the required landscaping has been installed. However, the petitioner shall provide proof to the current planning section the landscaping has been installed and maintained in accordance with the above mentioned code sections. From the north-south alignment of Park Lane to the easterly terminus, the petitioner shall construct to municipal standards 33-foot wide paved street with type 1 barrier curb and gutter on both sides of the street. Street improvements are required to taper and transition into the existing improvements. At the easterly terminus of Park Lane, the petitioner shall construct to municipal standards a paved commercial cul-de-sac with type 1 curb and gutter and having a 57-foot radius back a curb. From the northerly boundary of tract 8A, south to the southerly terminus of the Park Lane right-of-way, the petitioner is required to construct to municipal standards a 24-foot wide paved half-street with type 1 barrier curb and gutter and a 5-foot wide concrete sidewalk on the subdivision side in accordance with the DCM. With this request, the petitioner is requesting vacations of easements in right-of-way. In order for a petitioner to vacate the right-of-way, it has to be in compliance, in conformance with the municipal vacation policy. I'll go through each one of the requests separately. For the portion of the Park Lane right-of-way, a portion of the vacated right-of-way will be incorporated into the proposed lot 9A-1, which is owned by Cook Inlet Housing Authority, a co-petitioner in this request. The remaining portion will be incorporated into proposed tract 1A, which is owned by ESM Properties. The petitioner will be dedicating right-of-way for the Park Lane in a new location, and because of this, we find this right-of-way to be excess to municipal need. The 30-foot driveway easement, this easement extends across tract 7A to the west and was established to provide access from Cleveland Street to the existing tract 1 prior to the construction of Park Lane. This property is now provided access from constructed right-of-way, and it appears to be excess to municipal need. The 10-foot drainage easement, this easement bisects existing tract 8A and lot 9A. Since this tract and lot are being combined with this platting action, there is no longer a need for this easement as well. The temporary public use easement is being vacated as tract 8A is being dedicated to right-of-way, which makes the easement no longer necessary. And the 10-foot T&E and drainage easement is being dedicated to right-of-way with this action, which again makes this easement no longer necessary. So that being said, the right-of-way and easements are determined to be excess to municipal need, and staff recommends approval of the vacations and plat subject to the conditions listed on pages 9 and 10 of your staff packet. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? Mr. Edmondson.
Through the chair, Mr. Whitfield, I have a question in regards to a comment made by the Alaska Department of Transportation on page 6 of the packet. Says ADOT recommends that the plat boundary be expanded to include tract 8A. Right-of-way is being vacated that is not part of this plat and must be included to accurately show the platting action. Could you just touch on that for me, please?
Through the chair, Mr. Edmondson, I believe this is a comment that is, in my opinion, somewhat irrelevant and involves the Cook Inlet property to the north, because it's really not. They're relocating the right-of-way and vacating the right-of-way. I don't know that it's really a relevant comment. That's my opinion, and that's why it really wasn't addressed in the staff report.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. Appreciate that.
Are there any additional questions of staff? Before I open the public hearing portion, the procedures by which the public may speak to the Platting Board at its meeting is, after the staff presentation is completed on public hearing items, the chair will ask for public testimony on the issue. Persons who wish to testify will follow the time limits established in the Commission Rules of Procedures. Petitioners, including all his or her representatives, have 10 minutes. Part of this time may be reserved for rebuttal, and I would like to explain what that means. If you don't reserve time for rebuttal and you have time left over, you can use it for rebuttal. However, if you wish to definitely reserve time for rebuttals, let's say, for example, 4 minutes, then your timer will go off at 6 minutes and you will have 4 minutes left for rebuttal. So just decide if you want to reserve it. You'll still have it. If you don't use it, you'll still be able to use it. Representative of groups, community councils, PTA, et cetera, have 5 minutes, and individuals have 3 minutes. When your testimony is complete, you may be asked questions by the board. You may only testify once on any issue unless questioned by the board. Any individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the Platting Board takes. Appeal this decision or any of the conditions is governed by AMC 21.11.304. The decision of the board at the scheduled public hearing shall become final 7 calendar days after the date the decision is made on the record, unless a written request is submitted to the Planning Division prior to the expiration of the 7th day to prepare a written decision based upon the record made at the hearing, and the request is accompanied by a written notice of intent to appeal. Adoption of the written decision by the Platting Board becomes the final appealable decision. Within 20 days of the final appealable decision, an interested party must file with the municipal clerk either a written motion alleging new evidence or changed circumstances per AMC 21.11.503 or an appeal of the board's final appealable decision per AMC 21.30. With that, I will open the public hearing. Will the petitioner's representative come forward, please? Would you please state your name for the record and spell your last name?
It's Melissa Branch, B-R-A-N-C-H. We have no objection to the department's recommendations, and so I'll just hold our time for rebuttal if necessary.
Thank you. Are there, wait, before you sit down, wait. Are there any questions for the petitioner's representative tonight? I don't see any. Thank you. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to testify tonight? Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing none, you can use your time for rebuttal. You're shaking your head negative that you're not going to use it. Are there any final questions of the petitioner's representative? Mr. Edmondson, I think. Yes, Mr. Edmondson.
Actually, maybe this is a question for both the petitioner and staff. I'm still just trying to understand, I guess, DOT's comment. Does this platting action take into account anything on tract 8A?
No, 8A is the developed parcel, Cook Inlet Housing's developed parcel to the north of all the areas that we're working with, so it has not included at all.
So there's a note on this plat that I have in front of me. Note number 2, temporary public use easement per plat number 2010-79 to be vacated this plat, and that's referencing a note on tract 8A. So I'm just trying to understand. Maybe I'm not following something here. But
No, I think it's tangled, and let me look. So 11A is the developed portion of Cook Inlet's property, and 8A is being entirely dedicated to right-of-way.
Right.
And that's where that temporary use easement was. But so it is included in this plotting action, and the whole thing's being dedicated.
But the whole thing's being dedicated as right-of-way.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I understand. Thanks.
Through the chair, Mr. Edmondson, I would concur with that. My point is that really that lot is part of this platting action and is being dedicated to right of way. So we're vacating right of way, but we're rededicating it and using that lot 8A. So I would concur with Ms. Branch.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions of the petitioner's representative? Thank you. Are there any, well, the public hearing portion is now closed and the matter rests with the board. May I have a motion to approve for the variance of the right-of-way? Mr. Edmondson and Ms. Enix is going to second. Mr. Edmondson, will you state your motion, please?
Okay. Through the chair, in case S12078, Fairview subdivision, extension number 1, tracks 1A and 9A-1. I move for approval of the vacation of a portion of the right-of-way known as Park Lane to include the cul-de-sac, subject to condition 1, recording a suitable plat within 18 months of approval.
Thank you. And Mr. Edmondson, would you speak to your motion, please?
regards to the vacation of Park Lane right-of-way, a portion of the vacated right-of-way will be incorporated into the proposed Lot 9A1, which is owned by the co-petitioner, Cookland Housing Authority. The remaining portion will be incorporated into Tract 1A, which is owned by the petitioner. And then the petitioner will be dedicating the right-of-way for Park Lane in a new location, which makes the existing portion of the right-of-way in excess of municipal needs.
Thank you. Is there any opposition or discussion to this motion? Hearing and seeing none, the motion passes. May I have a positive motion for approval of the vacation of the 30-foot driveway easement, the 10-foot drainage easement, a portion of the 10-foot telephone and electric, and drainage easement within Park Lane right-of-way? Mr. Edmondson, would you state your motion, please?
Mr. Chair, in case S12078 Fairview subdivision, extension number 1, tracks 1A and 9A-1, I move for the approval of the vacation of the 30-foot driveway easement, 10-foot drainage easement, a portion of the 10-foot T&E and drainage easement within the Park Lane right-of-way being dedicated with this plat, and the temporary public use easement dedicated by plat 2010-79, subject to the condition 1, recording a suitable plat with 18 months of approval.
Thank you. And would anybody like to second Mr. Edmondson's motion? Ms. Enix. And Mr. Edmondson, thank you. Would you speak to your motion, please?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm going to just speak to each of these different easements that are being vacated separately. In regards to the 30-foot driveway easement, which extends across track 7A to the west and was established to provide access from Cleven Street to existing track 1 prior to construction of Park Lane. This property is now being provided access from a constructed right-of-way, Park Lane, and the 30-foot driveway easement appears to be in excess of municipal needs.
Thank you. Are there any additional findings or comments?
Do you want me to hit on all of the rest of these easements individually?
Yes, please.
Okay. In regards to the 10-foot drainage easement, it's no longer necessary. It's the easement that bisects tract 8A and 9A. And since these tracts and lots are being combined with this platting action, there's no longer a need for this easement. In regards to the temporary public use easement, it's being vacated as tract 8A is being dedicated to right-of-way, which makes the easement no longer necessary. And in regards to the 10-foot T&E drainage easement, portion of this easement is being dedicated to the right-of-way with this platting action, which makes the easement no longer necessary as well.
Thank you. Are there any additional comments? I have a couple. I agree with staff as far as findings that all the properties in the area provided both legal and physical access, and reviewing agencies have expressed no objection to the vacation request. Staff finds the right-of-way and easements to be in excess of municipal needs and recommends vacation. And I have the same findings. And I also find that this was noticed correctly, which is in the back of our packet, and that there are no public comments in the in opposition, or actually no public comments, but there's no opposition from the public in the written record, and there's no opposition tonight in the hearing, so I will be supporting this. Are there any additional comments? Are there any objections to this motion? Hearing and seeing none, the motion carries. Thank you. And I would request a positive motion for approval of the plat for 18 months. Mr. Edmondson.
In case S12078 Fairview subdivision, extension number 1, tracks 1A and 9A-1, I move for approval of the plat for 18 months, subject to conditions 1 through 6 on staff packet, pages 9 and 10.
Thank you. And may I have a second, please? Ms. Enix. Mr. Edmondson, will you speak to your motion, please?
I'll just say that I'll be approving my motion, or I'll be supporting my motion that based on petitioner's testimony and testimony made by staff, that all of the conditions that were brought up during the review process by outside agencies appear to be addressed in the recommendations and conditions, and I'll be supporting my motion.
Thank you very much. Are there any additional comments or findings? I, too, will be supporting this motion, and I just want to point out as a finding that the petitioner's representative agrees with these conditions as well. Is there any opposition to this motion? Hearing and seeing none, the motion carries. The motion's, the plat is approved. Next item on the agenda is the Cruz Industrial Subdivision, Block 3, Lots 1 and 2. May we have staff's presentation, please?
Let's grab Mr. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. The department is recommending approval of the vacation of a 30-foot building setback, platted building setback. The platted building setback is not necessary. It's something from a long time ago that isn't a condition that we place on plats now. An identical case came before the Platting Board about a year ago, and so if you feel like you're having deja vu from that case, about 2 lots down, there was a request for this very same vacation, and it was approved. I'd be happy to answer any other questions, and the petitioner, the property owner, is here as well.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Hearing and seeing none, we will open the public hearing to public testimony. Will the petitioner or the petitioner's representative come forward, please? Let us know if you'd like to reserve time for rebuttal. State your name for the record. Spell your last name, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you. My name is Michael Gatti, G-A-T-T-I. I'm an attorney representing AEL Properties. Don't have much to add to the staff report. We think they've done an excellent job of analyzing the circumstances, and the invariable conclusion that one would reach with respect to the vacation request is that this setback is no longer necessary for municipal needs. And it's no longer necessary because there's plenty of right-of-way on 96th Court. Access to the area is through 95th. There's no objections in the packet as you read that. And there was a previous vacation request that was substantially similar to the current request before you. So we would respectfully urge the Platting Board to approve the vacation, and I'm certainly available to answer any questions. And no, Mr. Chair, I don't need to reserve for rebuttal. Thank you.
Thank you. You have 9 minutes and 4 seconds for rebuttal. Are there any questions of the petitioner's representative? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is there anyone from the public wishing to testify tonight? Anyone at all? Raise your hand. Nobody's raising their hands. Okay. Would you like to use any of your remaining 9 minutes? And 4 seconds.
Mr. Chair, no, but again, any questions, happy to try to address them.
Are there any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
public hearing portion of this hearing is closed. The matter now rests with the board. May I have a positive motion in the case of S12090 for approval of the vacation of the 30-foot building setback? Mr. Edmondson, would you speak to your motion or state your motion, please?
Mr. Chair, in case S-12090-1, Cruise Industrial Subdivision, Blocks 3, Lots 1 and 2, I move for the approval of the vacation of the 30-foot building setback.
Thank you. And will you speak to your motion, please? First, I want to announce that Mr. Fuller seconds. Now you can speak to your motion.
I just, based on the testimony from staff and the petitioner and what's been outlined in our staff packet here, appears to me that the building setback is no longer necessary, that today 60 feet of right-of-way is sufficient space for truck turning and maneuvering, and therefore that the 30-foot building setback is no longer needed and is in excess of municipal needs. I'd also like to state that ADOT and MOA Traffic Division have no objection to the vacation, and would also like to state that on December 4th, 2013, the Platting Board approved the same vacation of the 30-foot building setback within the same industrial subdivision on Block 3, Lot 5. So I also would like to state that there was no public testimony or objection to this vacation, and I'll be supporting my motion.
Thank you. Is there any additional comments or questions or findings? Is there any opposition to this motion? Hearing and seeing none, the motion carries. Thank you. It's approved. The next case is S12093 Upland Subdivision, second time extension request. May we have staff's presentation, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On July 6, 2011, the Platting Board approved the subdivision of one tract into 26 lots, one tract, and 3 greenbelt tracts with vacation and relocation of a 60-foot drainage easement, a 20-foot gas line easement, a 10-foot electrical easement, and a 60-foot water line easement. The preliminary plat was approved for 18 months, subject to 14 conditions. The petitioner is requesting this time extension to resolve with Anchorage Water and Wastewater Utility and private development conditions pertaining to engineering requirements that could not be resolved prior to expiration. The first time extension request was approved by the Platting Board on February 6, 2013. This second and final time extension request was received July 2, 2014, prior to the August 6, 2014 expiration date. The current conditions are substantially the same as those which existed when the preliminary plat was originally approved per AMC 2115-115D3. Reviewing agencies had either no comment or no objection to the time extension request, and as such, the department recommends approval of the second 18-month time extension to February 6, 2016. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? We'll now open this public hearing to the public. May we have the petitioner's representative state your name, spell your last name for the record, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Tony Hoffman. I work for the Boutte Company, and I'm here representing the petitioner on this case. I'm going to keep it short. We agree with staff's findings again. We're only here tonight in front of you because when we originally made the application, we honestly thought that we wouldn't need a phased approach to this development. As we dug into it, it's a 5-year approval as well. And as we've dug into it, it's just become more and more involved. So That's why we're here for this second and final approval for an 18-month extension. We have no comments on staff's recommendations, as they are essentially the same.
Thank you. You have 9 minutes and 21 seconds
Okay.
for rebuttal. Are there questions of the petitioner's representative? Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got one.
Okay, Mr. Edmondson, sorry.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Through the chair, Mr. Hoffman, the petitioner in their request said they were unable to finalize the engineering with both AWW and private development, and that's why they're requesting this extension.
Yes.
Can you give me the specifics to that, please?
Sure. Honestly, we just got the notice to proceed about 2 weeks ago and got the plans approved. The plans were problematic, specifically the AWW plans, because it's a lift station that we had to create for the development that basically lifts all the sewer from the bottom of the development up to Stewart Drive. So it's there's 2 sets of pipes that are being installed in the ground, as well as a lift station. Working through the process of getting an approval for a lift station and a grinder station and all the pieces, or grinder pump, and all the pieces you need for a lift type system that will become a public system is problematic in AWW's processes, and it took us 3 years to work it out. That was the main holdup. The PM&E process was fairly straightforward. There's a lot of drainage issues. We resolved all those fairly easily. The biggest problem was getting the AWW set approved.
So do you have approval from AWW?
We do.
currently? And did you indicate that you had a notice to proceed?
We do.
And when do you anticipate starting construction?
We are going to start construction this fall, and we're going to finish it in the spring.
Additional question I have is the Eagle River Valley Community Council provided some comments to this case. Could you touch on those, please?
Well, item 1, use the night sky friendly lighting. The approved lighting plan is per the DCM, and there's absolutely nothing we can do about providing any other sort of lighting. It's not like the Hillside District Plan or anything. It's a very set of guidelines with the type of lighting and the spacing and all the things. So there was no options. It is what it is. We all would like different types of lighting, but the 30-foot buffer around the entire perimeter of the proposed subdivision, well, we're an R1A subdivision surrounded by R1A subdivisions all the way around. So it is what it is, and the rear yard setbacks will dictate what can't be cleared, but I don't know. This was an issue that was brought up originally. We do our best. There on the north side, if you look at the layout, there's actually a greenbelt buffer that's already in place on the north side, and that is a greenbelt tract. On the west side and on the east side, they'll be clearing. How far and how close they clear, I don't know, but the 30-foot is pretty onerous, even in any sort of development, and it's not something we could really agree to. The original wastewater plan that they're indicating, there originally was a design that brought the sewer down to Eagle River Road and brought it west all the way down, or excuse me, to whatever that is. It's not Eagle River Road, it's the highway on the south, and then it took it west a quarter mile to Eagle River Road. And that was originally looked at. Unfortunately, the grade didn't work, and we would have had cuts of about 30 feet and sewer lines that were too deep, and we couldn't make it work. We thought about it because that's as far up the road, up the highway, as the sewer is currently installed on the highway to the south of us, but it just wasn't a viable option. We looked at it. It wouldn't have required the lift. It would have been cheaper, but a 30-foot cut along the highway, it just was too problematic for too many different reasons. There were too many crossings. There were issues with waivers and wells along the highway. There were just too many issues, and it just wasn't a viable issue. We would have rather not put a lift station in. It's a very expensive option, but it's the only way to do these lots without making them a lot bigger and putting septics on them, and that doesn't pencil either. The next question, the connection, I'm not quite sure what this means, although I believe what they are saying is there was questions in the original application, a lot of discussion about the neighborhoods on both sides, on the east side and on the west side, don't like the additional traffic that they feel that this interconnection is going to bring. And part of the discussion they wanted to talk about was this remaining tract on the south side, what's referred to as proposed tract. They don't really talk about it, but there'll be a development plan later in place to develop that large tract to the entitled density, but that plan is so far out in the future. The Eagle River Council had talked about bringing a connection up to our road, the connection in our subdivision from that large tract, rather than connecting it directly down to Eagle River Road. They didn't like that. We don't really like it either. But unfortunately, we couldn't cross that drainage path. There's no crossing that to the north into the road we're building. So some plan will be put in place and some driveway permit will be gotten from DOT to create that plan, but that's too far in the future to really address right now. And finally, I'm not sure what to say about the hydrology study. I don't know what they're talking about. That's above my pay grade.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions? Thank you. You have 9 minutes and 21 seconds for rebuttal.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone from the public wishing to testify tonight? Would you state your name for the record, please, and spell your last name?
My name's Kerry Friedman, F-R-E-E-D-M-A-N. I live on Stewart Drive on the northern periphery of the proposed development. We have comments on a couple of the parts of the proposed development plan. I know this plan predates our residents in the area, but we've watched it over the last couple of years, or the last 4 or 5 years, with a lot of interest, and we've watched the plan change and evolve. The sewer line that's been discussed, as was mentioned, previous plans included a connection at Eagle River Road. The current plan calls for a pressurized line to run uphill and connect to an existing line on Stewart Drive. And this routing takes the line up between existing development and will, of course, necessitate removal of trees and plants to make for the line. We'd like to express concerns that this will require careful removal and replacement of this plant life so that there isn't excessive erosion. Also, it's been pointed out that with the time frame that was mentioned, a lot of this will be happening over the winter time frame. We're concerned that this may not be the best time to afford new plant life opportunity to take hold and help prevent erosion. So this kind of reinforced the needs for careful planning for this. A couple of comments on drainage patterns. We had a preliminary discussion with the contractor, and we are concerned that drainage patterns at the top end of the Stewart line, near where it connects on Stewart Drive, may be altered by excavation operations. We haven't seen the detailed plans, but we are concerned that this could affect a portion of our property and possibly reach our septic system. There are references in the municipality staff report to conditions to demonstrate that all post-development drainage patterns will not adversely affect adjacent properties or rights-of-way. And it's our hope that this condition will apply to all aspects of the development, including the proposed sewer line. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today on these matters.
Thank you. You're welcome. Are there any questions for Mr. Friedman? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public wishing to testify? Anyone at all? Mr. Hoffman, you have 9 minutes and 21 seconds.
I really don't want to get into the details of Mr. Friedman's comments, but we are held to those post-development patterns and the regulations. So if he starts seeing adverse effects in any sort of the on-lot issues, that would be drainage, footing drainage, water in the house, or any adverse impacts, we do welcome him to notify us as well as the city as soon as possible so we can address them.
Thank you. Any additional questions of the petitioner's representative, starting with Mr. Edmondson? Mr.
Chair, Mr. Hoffman, and probably a question for staff as well. Is there anything that's changed in the surrounding neighborhoods that would facilitate the need to add additional conditions to this case, or does it pretty much remain the same, and the conditions that were in place that were approved previously cover all of the concerns that one that you've heard tonight, and two that were in place at the time this was originally approved?
Through the chair, Mr. Edmondson, I believe, to my knowledge, there's no significant impacts to the surrounding area. We're recommending the conditions stay the same, 14 original conditions.
Mr. Hoffman, are you aware of any?
There's been no new development. There's been no changes in any of the surrounding properties that we know of. I know there's been no subdivision improvements, no road improvements, nothing on the highway.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Enix.
I have a question for you. What's the plan for revegetation of the sewer line?
We'll be clearing the right-of-way of the sewer line, whatever the width of the clearing is, constructing it, and then vegetating it to the DCM specifications. I think it's just hydro seeding at this time. But I can tell you we will not be clearing more than we need to because that will be closely watched.
Okay.
And I'll be flagging the clearing limits.
And you don't know what those clearing limits are?
I don't have the development plans in front of me. I think it's a 40-foot swath.
Okay. And it only calls for hydro seeding?
That's all. That's in the manual. And in the SWEP, I believe, too.
Thank you. Yeah, just one comment from me, under the construction general permit, which you have a SWIP for, will require to revegetate it so that, to prevent erosion. So,
right.
And you wouldn't want to do that in the winter, you'd want to do that in the springtime.
No. Yeah, you're right.
Are there any additional questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
And with that, the public hearing portion is closed. The matter now rests with the board. May I have a positive motion, please? Mr. Fuller, would you state your motion, please?
Yes, I move to provide the second extension request, case number S12093, Upland Subdivision.
Thank you. And Mr. Edmondson seconds. Would you speak to your motion, Mr. Fuller?
Since it's substantially just the same conditions that are previously approved, and the details were worked out on the previous things that challenged the moving forward, and they received their permit to move forward, I plan to support that.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Mr. Edmondson.
Mr. Chair, I plan to support the motion as well. I typically get a little concerned when these second extensions come before us because sometimes things change along the way. But the testimony I've got from staff and the petitioner's representative is that things haven't changed. AWW has approved their plans. They have a notice to proceed, and they plan to go into construction this fall and complete the construction in the spring. So I do know things sometimes take time to work through the process. This seems to be one of those. And I plan to support the motion.
Thank you. Any additional comments? I have a couple of comments. The couple of questions came up tonight. One was the removal of the trees and the revegetation, and that was resolved because the construction general permit requires that to be revegetated and stabilized within 14 days of the the cessation of soil disturbance, and that's covered in the plat under item number 8, provide to watershed management an acceptable stormwater pollution plan. And the other issue that came up with is drainage, and that is a requirement from project management that's under the design criteria manual in section or in chapter 2. So those issues are resolved as well. So I'm going to support this. Is there any opposition to this motion? Hearing and seeing none, the motion passes. The extension is approved. The next item on the agenda is the APU UAA subdivision, tracks UA1, UA2, APU1, and APU2, case number S12095-1, and Mr. Porter's going to be excused, or recused, excuse me. May we have staff's presentation, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a request to re-subdivide 4 parcels into 4 different parcels with dedication of a new street named Health Drive and vacation of the west half of a section line easement that's no longer necessary. The east half of the section line easement was already vacated by Plat 2008-78. The department recommends approval of the vacation on page 6 of your packet, subject to conditions 1 and 2. The department's also recommending approval of the plat, subject to conditions 1 through 8 on pages 6 and 7, and I'd be happy to answer questions. The petitioner is here as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions of staff? May we have the petitioner's representative or the petitioner's representative in this case come forward and state your name for the record, and let us know if you'd like to reserve time for rebuttal.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Jim Sawhill, S-A-W-H-I-L-L, and I don't believe I'll need any rebuttal time. The purpose of this subdivision is to dedicate Health Drive and make a new connection from the roundabout up to University Lake Drive. A portion of Health Drive has already been constructed with the roundabout. The initial road has been stubbed in. The university did want me to get on record that it's their understanding that that road was approved and built properly and that no reconstruction of that segment would be necessary as part of this action. They do understand that some sidewalks may need to be added, but they're not looking to reconstruct the recently approved and constructed portion of that road. We feel confident we'll be able to negotiate a proper urban standard with the private development section, but we do want to get that on record. We don't have any objections to the staff's conditions of approval as written, and with that I can answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you. And we do have questions, and you have 8 minutes and 55 seconds for rebuttal. Mr. Edmondson.
Through the chair, Mr. Sawhill. Again, and I think you clarified this already, but I'm going to ask the question again so I completely understand it. But ADOT's comment is that it is recommended that the plat should be updated to reflect the recently constructed roundabout with the connection to Health Drive. Currently, the plat appears to be adding a new connection to Elmore Road with the Health Drive dedication instead of reflecting it already exists as a part of the roundabout. So maybe you can just touch on that. I think you already did, but if you just clarify that again.
Sure. The portion of right-of-way that encompasses the roundabout now is a public use easement, and we will take that public use easement and dedicate it as right-of-way as part of this plat. So that will be handled.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any additional questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone from the public wishing to testify tonight? Anyone at all? Hearing and seeing none. Mr. Sawhill, would you like to use any of your 8 minutes and 55 seconds? No. And with that, the matter, the public hearing portion is closed and the matter rests with the board. May I have a positive motion, please? for vacation of the 35-foot section. Mr. Edmondson, is that you?
Can be.
It is. Would you state your motion, please?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, in case S-12095-1, APU UAA subdivision tracks UA-1, UA-2, APU-1, and APU-2. I move for the approval of the vacation of the 33-foot wide section line easement running north-south, subject to conditions 1 and 2 as outlined on our staff packet, page 6.
Thank you. And Ms. Enix seconds. Mr. Edmondson, will you speak to your motion, please?
Mr. Chair, I plan to support my motion. The section line easement's not needed for access because the proposed subdivision will dedicate Health Drive, which connects University Lake Drive to Elmore Road. Also like to note that none of the reviewing agents objected to the vacation request. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional comments or findings? Is there any opposition? Hearing and seeing none, the motion carries. May I have a positive motion for acceptance of the plat, I believe. Approval of the plat. Mr. Edmondson.
Mr. Chair, in case S-12095-1, APU UAA subdivision tracks UA1, UA2, APU1, and APU2. I move for approval of the plat for 18 months, subject to conditions 1 through 8, as outlined on our staff packet, pages 6 and 7.
Thank you. And Ms. Enix seconds. Mr. Edmondson, will you speak to your motion, please?
Mr. Chair, I plan to support my motion based on the testimony of staff and testimony of the petitioner and the information provided in our packets tonight. I believe all of the concerns and conditions have been addressed in these conditions and requirements, and will be supporting my motion.
Thank you. Any additional comments, findings, questions? Is there any opposition to this motion? Hearing and seeing none, the motion carries. It's passed. Thank you. Any individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the Platting Board takes. Appeal of this decision or any of the conditions is governed by AMC 21.11.304. The decision of the board at the scheduled public hearing shall become final 7 calendar days after the date the decision is made on the record, unless a written request is submitted to the Planning Division prior to the expiration of the 7th day to prepare a written decision based upon the record made at the hearing, and the request is accompanied by a written notice of intent to appeal. Adoption of the written decision by the Platting Board becomes the final appealable decision. Within 20 days of the final appealable decision, an interested party must file with the municipal clerk either a written motion alleging a new evidence or changed circumstances per AMC 21.11.503, or an appeal of the board's final appealable decision per AMC 21.30. Under new business, are there any appearance requests tonight? None. Is there any other tonight? None. Are there any persons to be heard tonight? None. Are there any reports tonight? None. Are there any board member comments tonight? Mr. Edmondson.
I'd just like to welcome Mr. Porter to our board. Look forward to working with you, and thank you for donating your time to the municipal cause.
Mr. Porter.
Thank you, Chair, and the rest of you. I appreciate the opportunity to serve, and I appreciate the opportunity to learn from all of you here on how to do this right. So, you know, I'm paying attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other board member comments? Mr. Porter, I know you're going to do just fine. May I have a motion for adjournment, please? Mr. Edmondson and Mr. Porter, meeting is adjourned.